Ada for losing my 27F cool with my parents' 57F, 59M for pushing me to forgive my cheating ex. I was supposed to get married in July. 2 months ago, I came home from a work trip to find my ex-fiancé in bed with my best friend's sister. I kicked him out, cancelled the wedding, and told him he better come get his stuff. When he didn't, I threw it all on the curb with a free sign, sold, donated, or dumped everything he ever gave me, and pawned the ring. Then I blocked him everywhere. When he showed up banging on my door after I'd given his stuff away, I called the cops. When he showed up at my workplace making a scene, I called the cops again. And when his family showed up to plead his case, guess what? Called the cops on them too. I didn't go full scorched earth on my ex-best friend's sister, but I did tell her husband what I walked in on. Last I heard, she got kicked out and is living with her parents. Ex-best friend tried convincing me to hear them both out seriously. What? No, then got mad when I wouldn't. She called me petty and cold-hearted, so I kicked her out of my life too. I don't need people who are casual about betrayal around me. Maybe that simmered under the surface and led to my latest blow-up with my parents. I went to dinner with them last week, bringing a date along, hoping it would steer the conversation away from my failed engagement. But nope, they've been pressuring me to forgive him. He's sorry, he didn't mean it. I owe him a chance to explain. He's depressed, having a rough time, and really loves you. You're being cruel, shutting him out. How could you call the cops on him? His family didn't deserve that. It's time to grow up and forgive him. Yeah, right. Nope, my date didn't stop them from bringing it all up again. I lost it. I asked my dad if he expected me to give my ex a pass every time he sticks his deck in anything that moves just like he does. Then I turned to my mom and asked how turning a blind eye to dad's cheating has worked out for her. How does she manage to hold her head up while having lunch with women who have been sleeping with her husband for years? Is this really the kind of man, the life, she wants for me and my sister? For her daughters? Did they have any clue what it did to us? Growing up knowing dad was late from work because he was screwing his secretary. Knowing work weekend meant a dirty weekend with someone who wasn't our mom. Did they really not wonder why out of 4 kids, I'm the only one who still talks to them? Do they not ask themselves why they weren't invited to my brother's weddings? Why they've never met their daughters-in-law or grandkids? Do they really think my sister's silence is just her being dramatic? I stood up, congratulated them on losing their last child, and told them I hoped their arrogance, willful blindness, and misery would keep them company until their last breath. Then I walked out. My date, poor guy, probably wasn't expecting to be part of this mess. But he took me to the nearest bar, let me cry all over him while I got shit-faced, and made sure I got home safely. The next day, he messaged to check if I was still alive, then sent over a DoorDash order double cheeseburger, large fries, and a large Sprite. Honestly, what a gem. I haven't blocked my parents, but I haven't heard from them either. It's been a week, and now that I've calmed down, I feel regret not for what I said, but because I can still see the looks on their faces when I said my final goodbye. I crushed them, especially my mom, and despite all their flaws, and there are many, I do love my parents. It hurts knowing I hurt them, and now I'm feeling a lot of guilt about it. Ada. Edit. I haven't read all the comments yet, but I've seen a few things that need to be cleared up. First, my date did know we were having dinner with my parents. He asked me out that morning, and I told him about my dinner plans. I even jokingly asked if he wanted to come along, fully expecting a no. When he said yes, I explained I wasn't being serious and that it would probably be uncomfortable. He laughed and said if things got bad, he'd be ready to post bail. So, there you have it. He didn't walk into the restaurant unaware of potential drama. Edit 2. To clarify, the people I mentioned in my post aren't the only ones in my life. I have my siblings, and they didn't cut me off. My sister flew in just days after I found out about the cheating to support me. I also have amazing friends. They were the ones who helped me pack up my ex's things, move it all to the curb, and one friend even found me a buyer for the engagement ring at a fair price. I only focused on my ex-BFF and my parents because their actions stirred up all the buried feelings that eventually exploded at dinner. Update. 6 months later. It's been a while since I was last here. Life got busy, work got hectic, and honestly, updating Reddit wasn't on my radar. Apologies to everyone who's been sending messages asking for an update. I guess it's better late than never, right? Quick recap. I lost my temper with my parents when they kept pushing me to forgive and reconcile with my cheating ex. In that heated moment, I said some really harsh and painful truths to them, and afterwards the guilt started eating at me. Where do I even start? First off, a huge thank you to everyone who replied to my post. I tried to read all the comments. Even though I didn't post looking for validation, many of you offered it, and honestly, it helped lighten the weight a bit. It didn't completely erase the guilt I was feeling, but it did allow me to process things better. I've realized that while my timing may have been off, what I said was absolutely necessary. I also want to give a special thanks to those who reached out privately. Reading your own stories of growing up in similar situations has helped me understand that my childhood and teen years were more traumatic than I'd ever acknowledged. This whole situation has forced me to confront wounds I didn't even know were still there. Shout out to those who sent me some truly wild messages about my choices. The ones preaching about the sanctity of marriage and how men are just basic creatures with basic needs. Those who thought it was their job to teach me how to do my duty by letting a man have his vices because apparently it was my fault for not supporting my ex. Extra special shout out to the men offering to teach me how to be submissive and learn my place. Oh, and how could I forget the sweet little nugget who claimed my reaction meant I'm a serial cheater and my ex should have used a cattle prod on me. Must have been a rough day for all of you when your women left. Big props to those ladies for getting out. Now, onto what's happened since. Not long after my last post, maybe a couple of weeks, my mother left my father. She showed up at my apartment one night with her luggage, looking absolutely broken. I'd never seen her like that before. She's always been so composed and dignified, but that night she was shattered. It hit me hard that she had no one to turn to. No family, no friends. And I couldn't help but wonder, if one of us had said something sooner, would she have found the courage to leave earlier? I brought her inside, held her, and honestly, my heart broke for her. I was so worried, I made her sleep in my bed that night. I called my siblings, and within a few days, they all came to offer support. Soon, it was me, my mom, and my sister, all crammed into my bed, just being there for each other. It was good for her to see that we still cared, that we still loved her. It wasn't her we distanced ourselves from. It was the situation. At first, my mom stayed with me. She was really struggling, and years of humiliation, shame, and guilt had finally caught up with her. I was worried about her mental state and didn't feel right leaving her alone, but I couldn't take time off work to be with her all day either. So I decided to take her to a shelter to get a dog. My hope was that having something to take care of would distract her from the dark thoughts. I was aiming for a playful puppy to keep her busy, but instead, she fell in love with a 5-year-old mixed breed. And honestly, the feeling was mutual. This dog is a total goofball. One night, we woke up to him howling because somehow, he managed to wedge his entire head between the spindles on the stairs. No idea how he pulled that off, but we had to call the fire department to get him unstuck. My mum, of course, didn't think it was his fault and now lovingly calls him her baby. The two are inseparable. Eventually, my oldest brother stepped in. He rearranged things and moved her across the country to live with him and his family. He figured being far from Dad and his many friends would be better for her. He also found her a therapist, which seems to be helping a lot. She's thriving as a grandmother now and, from what I hear, is the ultimate indulgent grandma. She has her own in-law suite and sees the kids every day. My brother says that whenever the kids go missing, they can be found hanging out at grandma's house. My dad. Well, he's my dad. He's never short on company. Not long after my mum moved across the country, I had dinner with him, and he introduced me to the new woman in his life. I reminded them both that I knew exactly who she was, considering she had called my mother her best friend my whole life. Cue another awkward dinner. Dad tried to keep things nice, but whenever she spoke to me, I'd bring up some childhood memory of her hanging out with our family and ask if she was sleeping with my dad back then. The next day, he called to tell me how disappointed he was in me. I thought it was only fair to share my own disappointments too. We ended up arguing a bit. He tried to downplay everything he'd done over the years and acted like he was the victim of his own actions. I cut the conversation short and blocked him. About a month later, he showed up at my door, but I wouldn't let him in. I could tell it rattled him. He told me he didn't want to lose me too. Say what you want about him, but he's still my dad and I love him. I don't want to lose him either. He promised he wouldn't force me to meet any of his new women. So far, we've had a couple of pleasant outings and they've gone well. I'm cautiously hopeful we can keep being in each other's lives. As for me, I took some of your advice and started therapy. It's humbling to realize that even if you think you're fine, you really might not be. Facing all that history has been almost unbearable, and digging through it all has been excruciatingly painful. After some sessions, all I want to do is head to the nearest bar and drink until I forget everything I just uncovered about why I am the way I am. Therapy is one of the hardest things I've ever done. I don't know how some of you have stuck with it for so long or why you willingly do it. I must be a little crazy for listening to all of you in the first place, but it is helping. Now, for the update that many of you want. I can't even tell you how many messages I've received asking about him. It's almost like you all were saying, "Girl, we don't care about your life crisis. Just tell us about the date." I haven't replied to any of those because my post wasn't about him. But I figure I owe you something since you all played a part in where we are today. I won't go through everything that's happened between us, but I will share a few key things. He reached out to me after seeing a podcast on YouTube. He sent me a link with the message, "Is this you?" Saying I was mortified would be an understatement. I was so embarrassed that I didn't even reply to him. I ignored his messages for weeks because I was too deep in my feelings. When I finally checked them, I found a ton of screenshots of people's comments about me. You can probably guess what those comments were like. Eventually, I did get back to him. It was hard for us to find time to meet since, as I mentioned, my life has been super busy. He has his own life and work, too. We only managed to grab coffee a couple of times, and I thought we wouldn't be able to build a friendship, let alone anything more. But I learned that he's tenacious and persistent, like a dog with a bone. He kept pushing until we finally found time for a second date. That date went well, leading to another and then another. He even introduced me to the two most important people in his life, his grandparents. His grandfather carves little wooden figurines, and now I have a whole flock of wooden birds. His grandmother thinks I'm too skinny and makes sure to feed me whenever I visit, often sending me home with food. He gets along great with my sister and brothers. He came with me to visit my mum on her birthday and met everyone. He was really nice to her. I saved his number in my phone as Cheeseburger, which he didn't like because he bought me a double cheeseburger. So I started calling him Double Cheese, then just shortened it to DC. He's still saved as Cheeseburger in my phone. He's also a secret Swiftie, and I'm not really sure how to feel about that. I have nothing against Taylor Swift, but I didn't expect him to be a fan. He initially used his little sister and niece as an excuse for his love of her music, and now he uses me. Honestly, I'm okay with that.